So as Christian has done, for those of you who don't know Christian, he is the chief of propaganda at Brains. He's done some incredible work when it comes to education, publishing, getting Bitcoin mining out to folks. And he's going to be leading us through the great Hashrate explosion, which he was studying diligently this morning.
Yes, yes. So
talking about our fabulous operators here.
Hashrate. So, ciao, I'm Christian. I'm the chief of propaganda at Brains. We do software for Bitcoin miners, from mining pool to firmware to management software. How about a quick intro? Why do you like Bitcoin? What do you do and why do you like Bitcoin? Or do you like Bitcoin?
Yes, I do. That's the short answer, yes. Hi, I'm Gazla. I work with Riot Platforms. And yes, I do like Bitcoin, and only Bitcoin.
So nice. So you're representing the mega mines on this panel and the Hashrate boom.
Yeah.
Are we calling it a Hashrate boom?
Explosion.
Explosion, okay, yeah. Good.
My name is Eric Hirschman. We do off-grid, rural, renewable Bitcoin mining in Africa. And so, yeah, we love Bitcoin because it actually electrifies a continent.
My name's Dan. I'm CEO, co-founder of OBM. A lot of people know us as our product name, Foreman. I love Bitcoin because last year we were trying to sponsor Bitcoin Park and we were trying to send a wire. And the only way to do, I had to go to the bank to send the wire. It was a pain in the ass. So Bitcoin fixes that, and that's why I'm a big Bitcoiner.
Let's talk how the hash rate changed in the past few years, because on our pool, I remember when I started 6 years ago, we were like the pleb pool, right? So like a lot of small guys mining, not in a garage, but like having 10, 50 machines. And now we've seen a big change, right? So it's the mega mines and the big clients. So we've seen a big shift, and we're historically the pleb, like the pleb brand, right? So we've seen the move to like a bigger players with bigger hash rate, bigger, more finance, bigger capital. What have you seen? Like Dan, tell me what, because you manage a lot of hash rate, right? And seeing all the different clients, how did you see it in the past 5 years, the change?
So when we first started Foreman, we were for the hobby miner. I was a hobby miner back in 2017. OBM actually stands for one bar mining, because when we used to mine, we used an LTE modem and it only had 1 bar of service. And even when we had 5 bars, somehow the performance went down. So we took the antennas off and stuck with 1 bar. So we started off hobby miners. We ourselves have migrated more towards the enterprise side, just because I think the life of the customer ends up lasting a little longer for us. We've seen a lot of M&A happening on our side, so a lot of the smaller miners are getting acquired by the larger miners. Generally, we thought that we would see miners leaving the platform at some point, but instead it seems like somehow we're slowly making less money because the smaller miners that we maybe had a higher contract with get acquired by the smaller miners that have a lower price contract. So just that merging and the acquisitions that are happening, everything, we see that happening a good bit, and it seems like probably every month or so some big site is all of a sudden has 2 domains emailing us rather than 1. And our assumption is that'll just keep happening over time.
Eric, tell me, so you're building the off-grid mini mines, let's say, across the Africa, right? Tell me about the size and the specifics of how big it is and what's specific about the operation that you run.
Yeah, we run the smaller stuff, but before, so we've seen this mega mining stuff happen in Africa over the last year too. So when I was here at NIMS last year, which is, we love coming here, by the way, because this is the time when we get to meet other miners who aren't doing kind of Bitcoin mining 101. We actually have really good conversations, learn from other people. This is one of the only of 2 events that we actually fly to on purpose, right? We're not invited to. And the interesting thing about this event last year was, you know, we were probably one of the 2, 3 largest miners in Africa, and we have very small amount of hash rate, right? We're really small guys. And between January of last year and September of last year, we saw in just one country alone, in Ethiopia, went from 0 to 600 megawatts, right, of operational mining. And so even in Africa, we're seeing this hash rate explosion, and that has a really big impact on policymakers, has a big impact on income for a country. We saw Ethiopia made $100 million of revenue just off of the Bitcoin mining, which is significant. I mean, I was laughing a little bit. I was listening to the governor. He's like, yeah, we put up $60 million just to attract people to come to set up their businesses here in Tennessee. So it's one state, and yet 100 million in Ethiopia is a lot of money, right? Like the state is not putting up that much money to attract any companies. So it's a significant amount. So that means then that Gridless, who's a little bit on the map for a lot of the other for a lot of mining in Africa, we just have gotten some media attention. We start getting phone calls from the energy leaders in other countries. So Tanzania or Guinea or Malawi or whatever country, we start fielding phone calls from them, and they're wondering about this now too. So it's an interesting kind of move we've seen just even in the African continent about how you can see the hash rate explosion, what it means for revenue, even if it's just dollar revenue, and then what it can mean for people who are interested in Bitcoin mining on the continent too. So there's some really interesting stuff going on in big mining. Now, as Gridless, we actually think a lot about small mining because that's what we do. We think about how it helps monetize rural energy, make it profitable, so you can actually then invest real money instead of using concessionary financing. You can actually really build new energy because of this. So that's what we're excited about today, in the diversification and the decentralization of Bitcoin mining as a whole. But the big stuff's happening too, and it's impacting Africa also. Tell me,
when you say, okay, we have a small mines, give me the context. How big are we talking? Like, put it in context.
Yeah, so if you were to come visit some of our sites, there's no site that's over 2 megawatts, right? So we're on a small river in kind of northwestern Zambia that takes 10 hours to get there from the closest airport. We're using Starlinks, and we're bonding that service with an MNO, Airtel or something. We're trying to make sure we don't drop packets as we send them back to the pool. We're in these little sites. The villages that we're near have no electricity except for the power that's provided by this run-of-river hydro, and it's just a really big difference in what most people think about Bitcoin mining, right? They don't realize that there's this ability for Bitcoin mining to tap into this global network that will pay you, right? So that all of a sudden you don't need to worry about who the anchor tenant is going to be in some far-off rural African village. You know who it's going to be. It's the Bitcoin miner, right? And that means you can now you have a reason to build energy all across the continent, where we still have 600 million people today who don't have any electricity at all.
From mini mines to mega mines. So when we talk about the hash rate explosion, we have to talk about hardware manufacturers also. Because yes, we still have a Bitmain as a dominant player, anywhere from 60 to 80% of the market. And you guys recently, or sort of recently, made a move, right? We're not going to use Bitmain anymore. We're going to move to MicroBT. Tell me about that experience, and tell me if you think the challenger, like if the number one will change in the next, and when.
I think absolutely the landscape with hardware is changing. So our decision wasn't to go give all of our business to MicroBT. Now, so far, we have purchased from MicroBT. We want to see different players. We want to see companies that come forward with really strong, reliable hardware that work for our sites, that do good business also, that kind of stand by what they do. And I think we're already seeing others come out doing that. So I think that's the most exciting change for me. So seeing that not everything has to be from one manufacturer, that's actually never really a good idea. Similarly, I think about the same with, yes, we've been buying from MicroBT, but do we want to only bet on one thing? There's always risk with that. So I think that's where our business, our growth, kind of helps the other part of that landscape, which is the manufacturers, do better business, provide new solutions, knowing that there's some of this bigger growth that we're still buying machines. They should continue innovating.
How do you go about because yes, we see Auradine entering the market, we know Blockstream, Brands is working on hardware, but how do you go about the problem that whatever they make, nobody wants to touch in the first place? They're like, hey, somebody tested, run it for 2 years, prove it that it works, and then everybody will touch it. But nobody wants to be the first guy. Like, how do we make that we have more competition on the market, but still all the miners in this room, they want to have proof of work first from that company? It's like a chicken and an egg problem, right? How do you go about that?
So I'm guilty of being that person that is not. That's not. I don't feel like I have to be the first to the market buying this thing. To me, that was what changed how I make these decisions, because back when we were with Bitmain, the last round of machines we were buying, I think were probably, back then it was $80 a terahash. The XPs, you were grateful to place an order with them to get these. And when you got them, however much longer after they were due to be delivered to you, you really wish you had tested them a little bit longer and had some experience with them before spending hundreds of millions of dollars on them. So lesson learned, painful lesson learned. We switched to testing machines. Now, did we know that we would go with MicroBT? No, we hadn't worked with them. So we started with a small batch. We had a lot of people involved in it. We had people, on the ground. We had our miner maintenance teams. Everybody had a say in this, and it probably took 9 months of getting data to get comfortable with it. We do the same with other hardware now. We like testing machines. We need hands-on. We ask for people to be patient with us, because we're not going to make that decision just because it's the first to the market. We want to be first. No, we want to feel confident that when we place orders, it's really building that foundation of a relationship and not just that one transaction.
Fingers crossed, we need more hardware competition, really. Going back to the topic of this panel, when I was thinking about that, I'm not going to be emceeing, but I was like, I have no idea why the hash rate is booming, like that much. Really, that was, coming into this panel, that was all my preparation. Right? I was like, I have no idea. It makes 0 sense. Like, the hash price is all-time low. It's like, it's that bad. It's never been worse to mine Bitcoin than now. And still, we've got everybody growing so rapidly. So why? What's happening? I have 0 answers. Like, I have no clue. Why do you think it's happening? Hash price all-time low is the worst time to be mining Bitcoin, yet we see hash rate explosion.
Are you asking me?
Anybody. Like, whoever has an answer, give me an answer. I don't know. Yeah, what?
I do think about it similar to you, right? But I still think those of us that have been doing this, at least on our side, we have been, our growth is not new. So this was our vision for a really long time. I have questions for others, and I do think you'll see ebbs and flows, and I think you'll see some slowing down. But I think there's a ton of excitement around, at least in the US, maybe some of the opportunities and what that will do. So I think that will give us actually a bit more of a surge.
I think a lot of people are bullish on Bitcoin and hash price over time and the price of Bitcoin, but I think also there's a lot of sites that are spinning up right now really just viewing it as, how can I make the most off of the energy that I'm using? And that's if you take a step back and look back maybe 5 or 6 years, I don't think anybody was really thinking about that. It was just get it plugged in, get it online, and I'm expecting to make most of my money by mining Bitcoin. But if you go to a really volatile market, there's a lot of times when pricing's super favorable. It could be under $30 a megawatt hour, it could be under $20 a megawatt hour, it could be negative for a very long period of time, which means depending on how your strategy looks, you might be getting paid to mine Bitcoin, which is pretty freaking sweet. But in other situations, you can be paid. You're kind of an insurance policy to the grid. So if I think everybody in here has probably heard about demand response by now. I think everybody's been talking about it for multiple years in the Bitcoin space. But a controllable load is a resource to the grid, because if there's a situation where there's not enough power and we're at the risk of a brownout or a blackout, you could fire up some peaker and generate more power, or you could ask somebody to turn off. And there are not many industries that can turn off at the scale that Bitcoin mining does, as quick as it does, and give all that power back to the grid. And for that, you're paid just for being available. It's kind of like auto insurance. You pay auto insurance every month, and hopefully nobody in here ever needs to use it ever again. But you got to have it. That's the same way the demand response works. Bitcoin miners are great resources to the grid, and 9 times out of 10, they never have to show up. But it means that you're getting paid insurance checks every month. You're kind of an insurance policy to the grid. So if you take into consideration how much money can be made off demand response, how much money can be made off of a good energy strategy where you're taking hedges for short terms or longer term hedges, or you're just you think the real time pricing is going to be really, really great, and you think that pricing is going to be 10 or 20 bucks a megawatt hour for the next couple of weeks. If you play that strategy really well, you can make a lot of money off just the load itself. And then if you think that there's not an opportunity to make money off the load, you can just mine Bitcoin. So it really comes down to making money off the energy you're using. And I think that's where a lot of people are actually finding the incentive to build out Bitcoin mines right now.
So I think my thesis on this is maybe two-pronged. I think there's a lot of sovereign mining that's happening that people don't know about, and they don't know where it's happening and who's financing it. And you'll hear rumors about it from time to time. I think that's one of them. And they can do it because they're mining at, 2 cents or less, right? So the unit economics really work. But there's something weird for me too in the public mining sector in the U.S. Just watching it over the last year. And I'm not pretending to be an expert because we're just little guys in Africa, but it seems really weird to me that there's large miners who are able to go out there and get huge amounts of debt at zero interest or very small interest. And I don't even know if they're mining anymore, right? They're using their leverage as being a big miner to get really cheap money. And maybe they're putting some more hash rate on. All they have to do is send a signal that they've just turned on 200 more megawatts. And then they get access to, maybe another $1 billion. And, that's something weird, right? And I don't understand. Well, I do kind of understand why it's happening. But I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing hash rate go up, even though their hash price to hash cost is upside down.
By the way, to give you a context of the hash rate booming, so if we would recalculate the whole network to S9s and look in 2012, we would be talking about 2 S9s running the whole network. If we recalculate now, it would be talking about 60 million S9s running 24/7 globally. So, and we're around 800 exahash. So 1 zettahash, I think it's happening this year, 100%. If I have to bet, it's the year of zettahash. How do you see that? Are we going to reach 1 zettahash when? And who's going to be the main driver? Is it the mega mines having access to cheap debt, so they're going to lead the way? Or will we see the bit axis overtaking the world, mini miners? So what will happen? What do you think? When 1 zettahash?
I do think it's possible this year. I don't think it's the mega mines. I don't think it's the U.S. I think it's.
That's a hot take. Tell me more about the not in the U.S. Because I just saw, right, we spoken about the Ethiopia booming, right? And they just announced they're gonna put like 15% VAT on electricity. That's repeating story. What I feel about the developing countries is like, hey, I track the capital, I track the miners, and then I'm gonna tax you. Like classic government story, right? So I would argue on the contrary. Like I think U.S. will remain the leader in hash rate.
So I do think we remain a leader. I do think I think other international. I think there's a draw, and I think the governments will start to want to compete. I don't think China is out of the question to go back up. So that's where I think the boom is going to happen, right? Like I think the U.S. continues to grow. I personally will say I plan on growing. As a public miner, we're going to grow our hash rate, but that's not going to get us to the zettahash. I mean, I would love to say it would, but it's not. I think that bigger boom is going to be places that have been maybe a little more quiet that are going to invest in and want to compete with what's going on here.
Before going to Eric, just for context, so mining is illegal in China, but still from some of the sources and looking at some of the mines myself that are happening there, right? So we think around 15 to 20% of the hash rate is still in China. It's illegal, but still we're talking about non-negligible hash rate being in China. So if they switch the policy, you're not starting from zero. There is the infrastructure, there are the people, there are the professional teams that can run the operations. So really, if they change the law, they can spin up very quickly from, and start competing for the leader position. I agree. Eric, when 1 zeta?
I would agree with everybody. I think this year is very probable. But interesting, when we saw the Ethiopia thing happen, even we put on the Africa Bitcoin Mining Summit every year, and so we get a lot of people who just want to come. And there's a lot of Chinese that are operating across the emerging markets. And they're bringing in fast money and fast operations. They're not going through the normal bureaucratic loopholes that everybody else has to go through. It's really quite incredible to watch them. But also let's call them Eastern Europeans, because I'm not sure exactly what country they're from, are actually quite active as well. So I think there's a lot of hash rate, to your point, that is not just in the U.S. and that it's really dark, right? People can't see beneath the surface of it, and that will continue.
That's one of the trickiest parts for us because we always struggle. What's our total addressable market versus what's our total serviceable market? Because there's just unknown hash rate that we don't know where it is, and we know there's a lot we don't have, and I don't understand how we get a lot of that. So it's just this void of hash rate, and you can't tell where it is. Is one Zeta this year? Probably, I would say so. I think that if you asked me this a year ago, obviously not one Zeta, but I think I had probably a lot more insight just because of our customer base on a lot of big mines coming to the U.S. And generally we know about it early because we're doing kind of power integrations or figuring out the demand response strategy or whatever the heck it is before they're energized. But I don't know of too many big ones really coming up in the U.S. over the next couple of quarters. But it's interesting. There's a lot of power out there, and I think that a lot of it ended up earmarked towards the AI HPC side. But if you look at some of the recent news over the last 24 hours or 48 hours, that new DeepSeek AI that's out there, I think that really shocked the world because it was done so cheaply, and it seems like it also defeats the whole mentality of we need a ton of money and a ton of compute and a ton of energy. So it seems like that whole industry theoretically could shift from breadth of data to just high quality data, and that's going to take away a lot of the energy needs. In theory, who knows? So there's a chance that a lot of those earmarked sites and a lot of those big interconnects that we're going to go towards that industry, maybe they end up becoming discounted a little bit more and migrating over to Bitcoin mining.
Dan, we talked about mega mines, we talked about mini mines, but still mini, 2 megawatts, that's big. But anyway, back question two, is home mining dead? The mini mining, the micro mining, is it dead? Is it like for now just it's a lottery, solo mining, tinkering around? Is home mining dead?
Is that for me?
Yeah. Like, do you see the segment still existing? Because we don't really see it. We see the move to like micro lottery mining. Maybe the heat reuse will change it for home mining, but currently we see it like almost dead.
Yeah, I would say it's probably fading away, but I guess hot take here, I would change that answer, I guess, within the last 24 hours because didn't Bitcoin Park just hit a block? So it's really hard to say home mining's dead when you guys just crushed a block yesterday. So
I agree, and
that takes the wind out of my sails. On that
I
one.
agree, and so they're raising money for open source development for mining. I think it's very important. So we're happy to announce that we're open sourcing our control board, Brains Control Board 100. So we're today. So. We love Bitcoin, we love Rust, and we love open source. Of course, some of the stuff that we do is closed source, but in the long run, this is where we want to see it happen also. So today we're open sourcing all the designs. We're providing basic OpenVRT of software to run it, so you can tinker around. So today it will be on out in the wild, and I hope it helps all the use cases. So congrats to Bitcoin Park. We're happy to help.